the thing that has gotten some people like me a little annoyed is that I do see a different level of scrutiny to her, even as compared to the people who have already announced. So, people are asking things like, where is her black agenda? I'm like, she's a candidate. It's not her responsibility to have a black agenda. You put together a black agenda, and then you make sure that you hold up all the candidates to that agenda.
I would disagree.
It's a little bit
I would disagree with that.
Well, if you're going to ask her, why wasn't that asked about Elizabeth Warren?
No, right. But that's also the point. The point there, which is why I also said, look, y'all, if you running and you black, you are not going. See this? You're not going to get the same runway that Obama got, okay? Because the reality is there were things that people wanted of him, but didn't say anything, and now they regret it. And see, I love the people out there who are also saying, "Oh, Roland, you new to this," which is hilarious. Because for all you wannabe just woke your punk asses up on the black agenda.
Hey you guys, it's Samantha from Black Nation News, and today I wanted to talk to you about an episode that I saw on Roland Martin Unfiltered a couple of weeks ago. And this episode was quite disturbing to me as an ADOS person, because I felt like I saw a lot of, I guess you could say, some African American, looked like some people up there were African Americans. Some I now know are black immigrants, or descendants of black immigrants here in America. And they were discussing how ADOS came for Kamala Harris. And the reason why the name of that video is members of the African American community press Kamala Harris for a black agenda. And that's on Roland S. Martin, his YouTube. That's the name of his YouTube channel, is Roland S. Martin.
No politician is going to lay out expansive position papers on different groups. Those things are actually evolved over time. And so usually when you roll a campaign out, you have general themes that are universal themes, because you are not talking to individual groups.
But she went out on a limb. She went so far out, she made me a little nervous. I mean, she was very specific about things that affect the African American community in a way, to me, that if she wasn't trying to wrap her arms around it, she could have just left off and saved for when people are pressing her on those issues. So I was thankful that she did that up front.
But folks want to actually hear black. Let's just be real on it. They actually want to just hear black. See,
she did.
She did that yesterday.
No.
Came all the way out.
No, you understand. When I say they want to hear, that's all they want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you got it's understanding.
Nobody else.
It's understanding what some people are talking, and just be real honest. Okay? What you're seeing with Senator Kamala Harris, what you're going to see with Senator Cory Booker, what you potentially will see with former Attorney General Eric Holder, what you would have seen with Governor Deval Patrick, are black folks saying, we screwed up. We were quiet.
That's like they were left empty-handed.
I know that.
Because they didn't get everything they wanted.
But I'm
not going to stand for people acting like in 8 years they didn't end up with the best unemployment rate that we've ever had in the entire history, of black unemployment rates.
Now, because she's a serious candidate.
She's right, exactly.
She right now, Senator Kamala Harris right now is a top 3 candidate.
Absolutely.
That's why she's getting that. So again, if she wasn't a serious candidate,
she wouldn't be.
Ain't nobody talking about her.
The thing is that she matched Bernie.
So we were getting further oppressed by supporting black immigrants, and actually a lot of the immigrants that were coming over, like Hispanics, so on and so forth. And so Tariq Nasheed, I had already heard him saying that that immigrants and other quote unquote minority groups, which actually includes white women who are not minorities in this country, they're supposed to be part of the majority race. And so it's like, how did you become a minority? And it also includes like Muslims and Hispanics and LGBTQ, like it's including all these people. But the reality is all those groups are eating and building their communities and their wealth off of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, that ADOS fought for these rights. So it's kind of, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why are other groups benefiting more than the people who actually were in the streets and actively having boycotts and marches and getting our heads bashed in and getting bit by police dogs and getting thrown in jail and having, water hoses pushed on us? And I'm sure that had to hurt. And just looking at those pictures and those videos seemed extremely painful. And this was a march, that was a movement in civil rights movement, was led primarily by, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. Like, it was all like ADOS members, ADOS peoples that were fighting for the human rights. I mean, really, we were fighting to be treated as humans in America. And that's just for ADOS. Because why would anybody else be fighting for that if they're not even here yet? Like, a lot of the immigrants were not even allowed to come into the country until after the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Then a lot of laws were passed, and that's when the floodgates kind of opened and allowed all these immigrants to come in. And don't ever get it twisted that this was an accident. White supremacy does everything by design. They're very calculated in their moves. So I do believe they knew exactly what they were doing when they were allowing all these black immigrants to come in, and they're giving them, and a lot of, I want to say they vet them. So a lot of, black immigrants that come in are wealthy. They're coming from wealthy families. And then, but the reality is they don't really share the same lineage as ADOS. They don't have the same sentiments. They don't understand our struggle. They don't give a shit, and that's just the reality of it. And I mean, yeah, it could be like with white people where they say, well, I have one black friend. I mean, yeah, you can meet black immigrants or who you may say are cool, like one by onesies and twosies. But when you look at it as a whole, nobody has ever had ADOS back. Like, we've always been fighting for ourselves, by ourselves. Like, even with the Pan-African movement, there was no reciprocation. Like, there's no African countries reaching back to support ADOS, who they sold into slavery. Like, there's actually an article that was written by a Nigerian woman, and she was discussing that her great-grandfather was a slave trader. And that really put into kind of like a context for me, because I had always heard, like, oh, blacks into slavery. A lot of white racists like to say that to, I guess, help them sleep at night because they're poor and they're pathetic. But it wasn't really like black selling blacks, because black is a term that was never used before white people came along and created this racial system, so that they could feel superior. And that's why it's called white supremacy. So they had to go by these colors. I mean, before this racist system was created, people were seen as tied to land. So they were either Nigerian or Ghanaian or, African or whatever. They were or European, Portuguese, they were all tied to, you had to be tied to land. You weren't just given a color and that's your race, And even to this day, honestly, like, technically your race is African or whatever. Like, there's not a black race, like, by scientific measures. So anyway, that's, they did this to kind of, so when they allowed the black immigrants to come in, because we're all going by a color now and not specifically being tied to land, it kind of allows for a melting pot of blackness where everybody can say, I'm a black American, or I'm African American, which is also can be considered a race as being African, having African ancestry, African DNA, African blood. So it kind of allows for people to become confused or be misled. So if you see like Joy Reid on TV and she's talking about, or she's talking about no reparations for black people, then you got white poor people in trailer parks or white, 1%ers, whatever, looking and saying, hey, Joy Reid said that, you guys don't need reparations. So that's why we haven't done it. Like, they're all white supremacists are always hiding behind black faces. They did it with Obama, which really was our first real, I feel like this was the ADOS wake up call and our first real lesson, how white supremacy works. Like, it was really our first major display of how white supremacy do what they do on a regular basis. And I call it, white supremacy and blackface. I mean, they basically are walking white supremacists. They're doing their bidding, but they're black. They have a black face, but it's like almost like they're a robot. They're not really technically black. It's almost like a Trojan horse. Like they allow them to circumvent into the black community like Obama did, and they play a little bit of basketball. They dance to Cardi B like Kamala was doing. They are like Cory Booker. They pretend to create a gangster imaginary friend, and they do these things where they say they eat hot sauce or whatever, and that's now considered identity politics. So we now the ADOS, because ADOS is probably one of the most intelligent groups of African Americans, like people that have been in America that are black, who are black since like the 1400s or beyond. We are probably the smartest group that has ever lived. If you look at the amount of degrees that we have, the fact that it's legal to read now, so on and so forth. So it's not to say our ancestors weren't intelligent, because they definitely were. Don't even lie. But as far as like being in America, like I'm not going to compare all of our history because we came from some greatness. Okay, so we were pretty damn smart from jump. But when we came to America, they took everything from us. We literally came to another country, didn't have our language, weren't allowed to read or write, etc. So we basically had to build from scratch to where we are today. And so now you have these intelligent African Americans who are not portrayed on TV, by the way, which is why you need to turn your TV off, because it's all lies. That's what I realized years and years ago when once Trayvon Martin was shot and I started doing my research. I realized whatever white supremacy says, you believe the opposite. So if they say you're not important, you're very important. If they say your vote doesn't matter, it matters a hell of a lot. If they say you're dumb, you're extremely smart. Just never, they're our open enemy. Don't ever believe them. Like, why would you? It doesn't make any damn sense. So anyways, like if you look at in the history, let me go on a little bit of a tangent here. If you look back on our history, like when did white people ever become our friends? When were they ever doing anything in our best interest? When did they ever do anything nice for us or tell us anything like, give me a break. I don't give a shit if you have like one friend that one white friend or whatever, who I don't even care if you grew up with. I don't give a shit, or if you have 3, 4, 5 friends. I don't care. As a whole collective, even those white friends of yours who are not fighting for reparations for your black ass, they are white supremacists, period. So I don't want to hear anybody, caping for whitey and saying, oh, well, I have, I know white people and they're not. I grew up around a bunch of white people. I was in a predominantly white area, and they weren't blatantly blatant with it, like, Trump is, and these white, nationalists or whatever, KKK and all them. But you could feel that they were trying to create this environment of like, we're superior, you're inferior to us. And people followed in line with that, whether they were black or white, school administrators or whatever, people acted accordingly. Even the mall security, I remember being a kid and they used to tell us to move along if we stopped and were talking as a black group of kids. But the white group of kids who were dressed in goth or whatever the devil worshiping crap they were doing, nobody was worried about. They just let them continue to do what they wanted. So this stuff has a lot of history in America, woven into America's fabric of all the racism. And that, because I'm gonna tell you right now, their biggest fear, white supremacists' biggest fear, is black people uniting, and that's ADOS uniting. They're afraid if black immigrants join too, but ADOS is the most powerful group, based on my research and my knowledge. We are the most powerful group in America, and we're the most threatening group to white supremacy.
I love dumbasses who actually can't read. Monique, I think you want to comment.
So the part of the I Have a Dream speech of Dr. King's that nobody really wants to quote.
That top part?
Yeah.
Right.
They quote the riffs, right? Because that's all
They quote
eloquent.
the dream part. Make us all feel good.
And it's real. But before that, he talks about that check that the United States of America has been, it came up insufficient funds back then. It's been insufficient funds since we were slaves. And it's still a bounce check to this day. day. I don't care what they have to do to figure out who gets the check and who doesn't get the check. I don't care what they have to do, how many censuses they have to go through, whether the immigrants get it or don't. It has to be done. So these candidates who are taking the right stand in principle are, to me, taking the right first step. Now, how long it takes for all this to get figured out and how many Republican presidents we can survive and how many Republican legislatures before anything ever happens, I don't know. But this is very, very simple. Indians, Jewish people, how many others were given an opportunity for equality through transfer of property and or money?
Chris,
it has to be done.
Chris, I interviewed, I gave a keynote speech to a group of black construction companies. It was here in D.C. And I met a sister who was from North Carolina. And she's a lawyer. And part of her job, Chris, was to go out and check companies to ensure they weren't front companies. So she was talking to the sons of the largest construction company in North Carolina. She says, how did y'all get y'all start? And Chris, what she said was, the son said, well, our dad was in the Army. And it was the end of World War II. And he said, you know what, I'm going to start a construction company. So they had some surplus equipment in the Army. And he said, hey, y'all mind if I take some of this equipment? Because, war is over. We don't need it. And they were like, sure. They were white. So he takes his equipment. He goes and starts his construction company. And as we were talking, I said, you can't find me a black soldier who got a shovel. Not equipment, a shovel.
So what I found really interesting, and the reason why I just had to do this video, was that once I saw that first video that I showed you guys with Roland Martin and his panel of groupies talking about ADOS and our call for reparations from the candidates who are running, they were doing a lot of kissing ass of Kamala Harris. And let's be real right here, because you guys know I keep it 100. Kamala Harris has a horrible track record when it comes to the black community, like ADOS, and just black people in general. She locks up a lot of people, and she actually laughed as she discussed locking up a single mother who was working 2 jobs because her kid did not skip some classes. And I'm like, give me a fucking break. Like, people lose their jobs when they're getting locked up, and if she's already struggling, juggling 2 jobs, for one, because of the situation that ADOS peoples have been pushed into, she shouldn't have to be working 2 jobs. She shouldn't have to be struggling that much where she can't really focus more on her child. And so that's an issue in itself. And that's another argument supporting why ADOS needs reparations now. The wealth gap is humongous. I feel like there's no middle class anymore for the black community. And I could go on and on and on why reparations need to happen, like right now, hashtag tangibles 2020. So I thought it was really interesting that, we stuck to our guns. We stood, like Yvette Carnell would say, we stood on our square, and ADOS is like, fuck that. We want a black agenda, or we're not voting. We are not giving our vote away anymore. ADOS is not giving our vote away for free anymore. So people were, I think it shocked people. They thought they could do some stupid, sambo babble, whatever. And we were just going to say, oh, okay, well, she does like Cardi B. No, sorry, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Like I said, we are one of the most intelligent groups of black people in America that have ever lived. And they have a lot, like the people who are not ADOS, anyone who's against ADOS, they have another thing coming. They have another fucking view of the world to get used to, because we're going to teach our children and our children's children and our children's children's children exactly who we are and what we're about. And that dumbing of the black community stops today.
Value, and that is in today's dollar. So we don't even have to go to Jim Crow. We can look right now at how insurance industries and the lending industry have bankrupted black communities and undervalued black communities. But I will take issue with one point in this sort of conversation about, well, what about white people and how they feel? I'm paying for a war. We are paying for a war we don't agree with, many of us, because we pay taxes. So
sustained.
When we talk about reparations for Japanese in the 1980s, black people paid for that. Native American people, Latino people who didn't intern anybody
paid for wars and had black soldiers who served in the wars fighting for freedom, and they could not take advantage of the very same freedom.
And reparations is essentially black folks giving America, the government, interest-free loan for the last 400 plus years.
It's a debt. And that's different than even paying for a war. It's like money we owe to another country. We don't have a choice to say, oh, we've owed that money since 1925. We'll just decide not to pay it. Of course, we don't pay our bills, but that's how it is.
But Chris, we all pay it.
Chris, my greatest problem with Chris Messler was, Monique, my greatest issue with Chris Messler was talking about, which is my issue with DeRoy and folks like him, is that they don't even understand American history. They don't even understand the fact that 243 years of slavery, 10 to 12 years of Reconstruction, 92 years of Jim Crow, and then if you use 1970 as the marker, black people have been technically fully free Americans for 49 years. And not only that, the reality is the Fair Housing Act was only passed because it was filibustered for 3 years, and Dr. King had to be assassinated for the House to actually pass it after the filibuster was actually ended in the Senate. But the thing that jumps out at me is that, which the reality, he's talking about, well, how white folks going to feel. The problem is that there are white people who have no clue about American history, who have no clue about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, no clue about Rosewood. Those are just two that we know primarily because of a book and a movie. The reality is, you can go across the country and you can find Beaumont, Texas, Springfield, Illinois, numerous black neighborhoods that were burned down and gutted and destroyed because of racism, and it was done by cops who stood by government, politicians who stood by government, and none of those places were rebuilt. You can show black people who were run out of the South saying, nigga, we will kill you if you don't leave. Black people who literally left hundreds of acres of land to escape being lynched. That was not, and they were not being protected by cops. That is government. And so when you had, so when white folks, like I had one white dude who sent me an email saying, nigga, let me go ahead and read this here. It was I need to read this for y'all to understand the reality, what you're dealing with. So he sends me this email, Jonathan Morse. You can pull your dumb nigga shit on CNN, but do yourself a favor and stay off Charles Payne's show. He is too smart for you and makes you look like a stupid fool. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead, Malik.
Yeah.
I find in American history 15 consecutive years of sustained black growth. 204, August 1619, first 20 on Africans arriving. So you go from there to Emancipation Proclamation, 243 years. And when you look at 10 to 12 years of Reconstruction, 5 years into Reconstruction, white folks are like, all right, y'all, we good. All right, look, we done enough for y'all. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 1860 Civil Rights Act. What the hell more do y'all want? Okay. So then you go to 1876, the Great Compromise of 1877, gets into effect. Jim Crow, now 92 years. Emmett Till gets killed August 28, 1955. Montgomery starts December 1st, 1955. Let's say it goes through the Fair Housing Act. It's 13 years. It's 13 years, okay? But the reality is that still wasn't economic growth for black people. That was fighting for rights. Then, of course, you have Hatcher, elected mayor in Gary, Indiana, Stokes in Cleveland, Maynard Jackson, elected mayor of Atlanta, Coleman Young in Detroit, Mayor Marion Barry in D.C., these black mayors elected. So let's say, okay, fine, that's 70, say late 68, 80, what happens? Okay, growth for black folks in business, 0.0012% of the contracts in Atlanta when Maynard gets elected at 12 cents for every $100. That's 12 years. 1980, Ronald Reagan. In affirmative action programs, Supreme Court rulings, okay, about 10, 12 years. But then when you go through Reagan, let's say you get to Clinton, okay, fine, you get to Clinton, okay, America goes up, highest point of black home ownership ever is there, and all of a sudden, Bush becomes president, thing collapses by 2007. We lost 53% of all black wealth. Now you're still trying to build. So the reality is, black people, for 400 years, went here, then here. Went here, then here. Then went here, then here. We didn't go here.
The dumbing down of the black community absolutely has to stop. Like this mumble rap and sagging the pants, which actually came from like prison culture or letting other inmates know that you're available for sex. That's not happening anymore. Okay, so I always let my sons know, pull your pants up. Like, what are you doing? So we taking it back a little bit old school. I talked to my grandmother the other day, and even my grandma, who's like 84, was saying that the type of grandmother she was don't exist anymore, and that's very true. But I told my grandmother, trust and believe, that type of grandma's coming back. So you do some dumb stuff with me, I will hit you upside your head. We gonna keep it 100 because I don't have time for the black ignorance. I told my son he wanted to do a YouTube channel and he wanted to copy like some ignorant channel that he watches, and I told him, no, it's time for black intelligence. When you create a YouTube channel and you're representing your black family, the ADOS family that raised you, you're going to act like you have some sense. It's kind of like funny. It reminds me of like when people used to say, you're acting like you have no home training. And that's what we're not going to do, is get on YouTube around billions of people worldwide and act like you have no home training, because you do have it. So anyways, let me get back on the topic. So this video, the second video with Roland Martin and his panel that he has, I thought it was remarkable how much their tune changed when it came to reparations for ADOS. Even in this portion where he's on this Fox News with DeRoy Murdoch, and I'm gonna try to not go on a tangent about DeRoy Murdoch, but he is a piece of shit. But anyway, so you can tell that Roland Martin definitely knows his stuff. When he wants to fight for ADOS, he does it, and he can do it well. But that's when he wants to, and I feel like, people like Roland Martin, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Obama, that minister guy, Mark Thompson, all the civil rights leaders that are still alive, I guess they just, sold out so they could stay alive and eat well and eat their butter biscuits. Like Reverend Al Sharpton, what church does he have? How is he Reverend? I don't know. And then Jesse Jackson. I just realized, like, why are all these old civil rights leaders reverends? Then you got Jim Clyburn. What the hell is he doing? He's like the majority whip in the seat of the House of Representatives, and he also is in the Congressional Black Caucus. And I'm just realizing all this stuff is coming together, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, these people are not fighting for ADOS at all, and they haven't been fighting for us for a very long time. And it's obvious because we're in the state that we are in today. We're reaching poverty levels. We're basically third-class citizens in a first-class work country. That I just saw a study that was just done that the United States is like the most powerful country in the world. Do you guys realize that? Like, how did they come to be the most powerful country in the world? Hello, like, if I had a company and I didn't have to pay my employees for 400 fucking years and my family ran this company, of course we'd be very fucking powerful. We'd be very fucking successful. Like, you get to have all these employees that you don't pay and you've never paid, and they want to, talk about we're a world power and feel all good about themselves. But like, hello, where the fuck is my check? Like, my ancestors worked. Like, who goes to work for free? Is there anyone listening to this video who goes to work for free? That's what I want to know. Like, anyone that tries to not understand reparations for ADOS, American descendant of slaves, the first thing I tell them is, how about you go to work for a day for free? And don't come talking to your boss about where's my check, because that's asking for a handout, right? Like, because that's what you tell us when we want our reparations, because Jews have their reparations, Native Americans have their reparations, Japanese have their reparations. Everybody got their reparations. And guess what the kicker is? ADOS is paying reparations to those people. I don't remember sitting at a table agreeing to that. I don't remember my parents sitting at a table agreeing. Like, basically, up until this point, I don't think we even knew we were paying reparations to these groups. It was a meme. I guess you want to call it a meme, but it had like the White House, and they were telling the Democrats, if you ever want to see this ever again, like you ever want to be in this house ever again, you will have a black agenda. And when we say black agenda, we mean ADOS agenda. So I'm gonna try to keep this video short, because I have gone on a tangent a few times. I'm just so angry. But I just thought it was interesting to kind of like point out how different Roland Martin's first video that I saw was compared to the second video that I've posted on here. that I have on this video, on my video. Like, I wanted you guys to see the comparison of how different the argument sounds when it comes about to talk about reparations. The first video, he was calling us sons of bitches or jerks or whatever. He was calling us names. He was being very mean and rude to us. He was cussing us out. And then the second video is like, oh yeah, they definitely should get reparations. Like, what are people thinking? Like, yes, reparations for ADOS and blah, blah, blah. And what really, again, like I said, stands out is that there was a period where Dreadlocks, I don't know her name, and Monique Pressley were sister dapping and having, like, they were cackling in the background when the woman with the locks was saying something about, oh, they just want to hear black, like stuff just for black people. And it's like, yeah. And what's wrong with that again? Because I don't know. I missed that. Like, I don't get what the issue is. Like, of course we want just for black, because everything that was oppressing us and putting us at a disadvantage was just for black people. So, and what's angering me too is that I see where this is very dire situation for us, because I see where there's Hispanics and other groups surpassing us in the rights and things like that, and the laws that are being passed to benefit them. They're passing us by. And so, as I said, I want to keep this video short, so I just wanted to say thank you for watching. And again, this is Samantha with Black Nation News.